Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. We're here today with a replay from Josh Norman. He's going to be taking the High Elves up against Anticity's Empire, and as you can see already, we've got a Hellstorm rocket battery in the distance. Alariel going to be leading the way with a Frostheart Phoenix. We've also got some Dragon Princes here, looks like Illyrian Reavers. Spearmen in the front line, we've got Archers as well, some White Lions, and more Reavers over on the far side. Anticity's very wide empire here. He's got Boris Todbringer up in the air, handgunners, and yeah, the Hellstorm. Lots of state troops with some great swords as well. A Reichsguard, and yeah, more Reichsguard on the far side tangling with those Illyrian Reavers. And the Hellstorm rocket battery is an interesting choice. Not the biggest fan against the High Elves in particular. It can be good in a couple other matchups, but yeah, just for me, I think you can get very similar performance from something like a mortar. Just looking at this build, he's already got a lot of anti-infantry, right, from these great swords. The Reichsguard, Boris, you can see, is getting hit by Tempest here and chased by the Frostheart Phoenix, which is a great use for the Frostheart Phoenix. Does have pretty good weapon strength, doesn't have the best splash attacks, but it's good in a single target situation, especially with Alariel's support. It doesn't have the healing, but it has much heavier armor and a potential for ward save as well, so yeah, pretty good stuff there. You can see the Reichsguard here getting baited into the fireboard, and the other Dragon Princes. I'm definitely going to have to pull away there, but unfortunately Reichsguard are quite a bit slower than the High Elf Cavalry. Dragon Princes, 78 speed on them, very fast for a unit in that class, so to speak. Boris regenerating here relatively slowly, but still also relatively quickly in comparison to a lot of regeneration items. And a lot of handgunners here, sort of a missile defense build, which is not something I typically play, but nice to see that. Got Reichsguard pulling up and around the flank here, potentially going to come disrupt this back line. But Boris is in a little bit of a pickle here up in the air. He really needs to start diving some of these Empire ground troops so that he can get the support of his units. Just trying to fly around with these handgunners as well to try and get melee support, but that Tempest from Alariel is pretty brutal on that Overcast, does quite a bit of damage, and just slows him down enough that the Phoenix can get a few attacks there. He's also going to eat a bunch of his own handgunner fire there, which is a pretty painful experience, no doubt. Nice Penumbral Pendulum there, though, does a good amount of damage to those Dragon Princes, and yeah, not too bad, but unfortunately for this missile defense, yeah, you can see the backline's been compromised a little bit. That being said, balance of power is in the Empire's favor as the Reichsguard start to kind of clean up this flank here. The Hellstorm rocket battery has mostly only been shooting at archers, and I mentioned before, a mortar could have done this job for a little more than half the price. Yeah, you can see Alariel dropping that very critical heal over here. Star of Avalorn on that nice Dragon Prince blob. The Frostheart Phoenix also diving down in there. Boris is going to dive the Frostheart Phoenix, but to be honest, you shouldn't really attack the Frostheart Phoenix. You should just ignore it as much as you can, unless you can get it like caught out with a bunch of missiles and take it out really quickly. It's kind of a flying tank. Like, its role is a tank. It's meant to just take damage, has good melee defense for a monster. Yeah, you can see Boris gets caught out here by the Dragon Princes and is going to get finished off by the Phoenix. A little bit of a painful end for Boris there. But the handgunners, kind of defensive pocket here, will be able to hold the Elf Archers, despite the best efforts of that Hellstorm rocket battery, have just barely been dealt with. And this is the one thing about the Hellstorm. I really feel it's better against either Skaven because of the Horde situation, and be good against Dwarves as well because of its long range and ability to force the Dwarves to come to you. But against the High Elves, because of their relatively low model count, I just don't see it being super cost effective here. The handgunners are going to get some point-blank volleys into these Dragon Princes, but thankfully the physical resistance, extra physical resistance from Alariel, looks like it's hitting them, at least momentarily, but their base 20% certainly will help against that handgunner fire. Alariel and the Phoenix also diving down, so the mobile pressure kind of starting to tell in the Empire backline. Balance of power still in their favor for the time being. A lot of great swords still in the front line. Spearmen, fighting spearmen, just wet noodling each other, basically. Illyrian Reavers trying to make a difference there, but not really getting that good of a charge. Meanwhile, the Reichsguard are cleaning up the archers that they could have cleaned up. Yeah, the Hellstorm has basically wasted its ammo on, more or less. But Dragon Princes, they're going to be pretty decisive in this late game. And this is the thing, this is, I guess, a good reason why I don't play missile defense builds. Counter-rushing this with like a demi-blob would be very, very powerful. Yeah, especially with something like, you know, Volkmar or even Karl diving down to provide that Hammer of Sigmar, or not Hammer of Sigmar, I guess Reichland Runefang in his case. But the attack buffs nonetheless, and the defensive buffs and everything, just to juice up the demis, they'll just absolutely destroy Dragon Princes. And sort of just going counter-rush into this, like, yeah, I think it might have been a little bit more effective, and even just this missile defense build, like, if you swap that Hellstorm rocket battery out for a cannon, not even the Hammer of Witches, because cannon shots, even the regular cannons, will one-shot Dragon Prince models, so I mean, you could bring, just for literally the same cost, the Hammer of Witches, and that would be very good against the Dragon Princes. It just has better refire rate and accuracy, basically, and I guess the magic damage could help against Alarielle, potentially, since she has some physical resistance. But even just a regular cannon, you know, and save on some cost, maybe bring an extra unit or some chevrons or something, that would have been more effective here because you could dedicate that to shooting at the cavalry. And I do think that Anticity's build was relying a little bit too much on the guns and the spears for counter cavalry, and that's just not super realistic because the cavalry can outmaneuver you in many cases, and I mean, physical resistance and healing and everything, yeah, ended up being a tough situation for them. So having a cannon for the anti-cav duty, and you can press it into anti-archer duty if you need to, but then, you know, just try and win the cav engagement a little bit more decisively. You could even use the, if you change this out for a regular cannon, that's what, 800 points versus 1100. You could use the extra funds to upgrade one of those Reichsguard to a Lance Demigryph Knight and just run them around like underneath Karl, charge them all together into Dragon Princes, maybe with even Reichsguard support together, and you'll win that engagement pretty decisively, pull Alarielle into the Phoenix down onto the ground where the demis can help you in that fight. And then, yeah, I think honestly this build, just with that, would have honestly worked here. It's hard to say. It's definitely an interesting matchup. And that Tempest on Alarielle is something you have to account for. Even on Boris, who's a pretty good healing lord up in the air, it can be risky. Karl is obviously at pretty big risk as well. Volkmar can be a good option. I'm kind of speaking as an Empire main here, but from the High Elves side, Alarielle is a very, very strong option, basically in any matchup, so no surprises there, and certainly in a matchup where you feel you might have to take on a powerful Air Lord. Going with a build like this, with the Frost Phoenix plus Alarielle up in the air, you can Tempest them. The Frost Phoenix can catch up because of its higher weapon strength, better armor, and melee defense. It's better at dueling single entities than, say, the Flamespire Phoenix, and it's still relatively cheap as compared to, say, like a Dragon, certainly. Although, Star Dragon's never a bad pick either. Star Dragon's also got its breath attacks and is just massive HP pool. Obviously, it's quite a bit more expensive. You probably couldn't take the Dragon Princes if you took an actual dragon, but yeah, for the High Elf build, personally, I think I would trade out these Dragon Princes for more Reavers, maybe 1 or 2 Silver Helms, and upgrade the Phoenix to the Star Dragon, just for my sake. I mean, I do like the pick of the Phoenix, certainly, and the extra speed is nice in this kind of a situation where you're using Tempest to catch an enemy lord and chase them. The Star Dragon isn't quite as fast, obviously, but just more powerful overall. And those breath attacks, certainly if you can use them in the right place at the right time, would be decisive. But fantastic play here. Nice to see some High Elf wins. A lot of people think the High Elves are weak. I disagree with that. I just think they're hard to use. These are actually High Elves and Empire. This is one of the reasons this matchup is really interesting, in my opinion, is these are both kind of high-skill factions. So people who are good with them end up having really, really close battles here. And honestly, this was a really close battle, which is why just some minor tweaks on both sides of these builds could have made some pretty big differences. And both players played it pretty well, honestly. It's a tough situation to be forced into when Alarielle comes at you with Tempest and Phoenix, so I don't I don't fault Boris for kind of falling apart a little bit there, but yeah, it's an interesting one. You can see one of the unit of Reichsguard that got to the backline. 230 kills is an absurd amount of kills to get against the High Elves, to be honest, on a single unit. Even against a relatively wide High Elf build like this, like, that's a lot of work done by those Reichsguard. And this is why I would say you really don't need that Hellstorm rocket battery. Again, you switch that out for a cannon. Just use those funds to maybe upgrade one of these Reichsguard, or you could even cut a couple handgunners and then buy a Demigryph Knight from that. And then, yeah, you'd have a little bit more to counter the enemy mobility, and you can just win from there. On the High Elves side, I already kind of mentioned my thoughts on the build, but the Dragon Princes honestly did a lot of work, and kind of nice to see that. You don't see that necessarily super often these days. Dragon Princes are a powerful unit, don't get me wrong, but Elite Cav are just kind of in a little bit of a strange place right now in a lot of matchups. Even in this matchup, like something like a cannon or a steam tank, it just makes a mockery of elite cavalry, which is a little bit painful, but it's definitely still very fun. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. A big thanks to Norman for sending that one in. If you guys like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.